Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hopefully not too young because we tend to use naughty words, it is Jeremy Vaeni, Our Undoing Radio. That's what you're listening to. I hope you know that much. And with me, as always lately, is Tom Cheetham. Tom, hello. Happy New Year.
Hello, that's right. Happy New Year. Good luck.
Yes, good luck, everyone. We'll see if the umpire falls. Place your bets. I guess we've got a clean slate. We've talked about Iboga. You may have more updates that you want to talk about, but you had sent me something, and you said, hey, let's talk about this. And it was just like a week ago, which means I don't remember exactly what it was. Right. But I remember saying, I can talk about it on this level of like how words matter when it comes to talking about truth with a capital T. Mm-hmm. And when we screw them up even just a little bit, that gives the listener permission to screw them up just a lot of bit and go off on these various paths and tangents and translations, and thus we get religions and the like. But since I don't remember what the hell you sent me, I did just happen to, I'm still plowing through Memories, Dreams, and Reflections by Carl Jung, which was his memoir. And there's a paragraph in here that gets to exactly what Carl Jung was up to his entire life and how I believe he's mistranslating something, but we'll get into how that mistranslation occurs or the possibilities, because we all need to know them. So, Tom, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go into teacher mode for a second here and read something.
Do it. I know, I'm going to catch up. Yeah.
Okay. So this is just a paragraph from page 276 of the softcover version here. He has gone to India. He's refused to talk to gurus and the such because he doesn't want to get subsumed into Indian culture. He's talked about this in terms of like going, what is it called? Going primitive or something when he goes to Africa. I mean, there's all this racist stuff in here. He doesn't want to talk to gurus. He wants to talk to, I guess, people who are like scholarly political types, it seems. He doesn't really say who he's talking to in terms of like what their title is, but he talks to, I don't know if you call them cultural practitioners or scholars or whatever. So that's who he's talking to about Indian spirituality and the meanings of the statues and the streets and all of this sort of stuff.
What page are you on?
What's that?
What page are you on?
276 of the soft cover.
Yeah, I probably got it here. Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So he says, quote, "The Indian's goal is not moral perfection, but the condition of, I'm going to screw this word up, nerdvandva." I don't know. There's two V's. So the Indian's goal is not moral perfection, but the condition of nerdvandva. He wishes to free himself from nature. In keeping with this aim, he seeks in meditation the condition of imagelessness and emptiness. I, on the other hand, wish to persist in the state of lively contemplation of nature and of the psychic images. I want to be freed neither from human beings, nor from myself, nor from nature. For all of these appear to me the greatest of miracles. Nature, the psyche, and life appear to me like divinity unfolded. And what more could I wish for? To me, the supreme meaning of being can consist only in the fact that it is, not that it is not or is no longer. So that's it. Carl Jung is saying, I don't want nothingness. I want everythingness. I want to live the fullness of this life. And the reason I bring up the guru versus scholar thing is because when you read something like this from someone we've been told is great, for people like me who I read him and I realize like he gets it a lot of the time, even though he doesn't seem to know that he does. But so again, going back to the scholar guru thing, it is possible that in this time that he is talking to someone, gurus are crap. Like it is, I don't know enough about India to know, like at some point, I mean, I've read Krishnamurti talking about this place used to be a really spiritual place. A lot of great stuff came from here. What the hell happened? You know? So it's possible that at this point in history, when Carl Jung is there and beyond, it's been commercialized. it's been, the flavor of Western money coming in and guruing for people has taken over, or that just through the sands of time and through political history, all this stuff gets codified and meaningless to the day-to-day people. And so they don't even know what the hell they're saying anymore. I'm just saying this is a possibility. So when you talk about emptiness and nothingness, it used to have a meaning. They used to know what they were talking about, and now it's so many times removed that they don't. And that this is getting explained to Carl Jung incorrectly. So it's possible that a guru would have explained it correctly, or maybe not, because, again, the commercialization, maybe there are no good gurus, but maybe the scholar is getting it wrong, or maybe Carl Jung is getting it wrong, or all of the above. And I'm just putting this stew out there because as you read it, you can't just read like great guy says this, therefore great guy is correct. And great guy went on his path of shining a light on the psyche, and that is the correct way to be, or that there is no correct, incorrect. He doesn't understand, for whatever reason, what's being said about nothingness and emptiness. He thinks that this is an either or proposition and not a sort of waking up is growing up proposition. He wants to be the little kid with the flashlight in the dark. But he thinks that is also being an adult. He thinks that is an adult choice. And we almost all believe that, right? Carl Jung's mistake is Western society's mistake of believing we can do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, as Aleister Crowley once said. And no, it's transcend and include. That nothingness, that emptiness is truth with a capital T, is consciousness per se. And we are that. And that, as I've been saying forever and ever and ever on this show, is what needs to be the self that lights the vessel that is the body. That is timelessness flowing through time. There is no, I mean, obviously there is. Obviously, when I say there is no us ignoring that and going, and being, creating through this self in the body, there is, obviously. But it obviously always comes to a climatic, dramatic conclusion because it's unhealthy. So it may take a really long time for civilizations to collapse, but they always collapse. So on and so forth. And if you look to certain First Nature cultures, they say they've been where we are, and so they understand it, and so they're just sort of waiting it out. And here we are at the end of their, the Hopi prophecy, etc. So I just want to throw that out there because not only did Tom send me a quote, someone else from your class who I remember from our meeting together on your thing, who I think is someone who can get this because he really is open to it. But he sent me a quote, I think it was from Corban actually, that and I hate it when people send me things and that they are meaningful to them and they want to share it with me and they want to get my feedback, and my feedback is like, well, that's silly.
Yeah,
because how do you frame that so
no, you be a teacher, man. You got to say, no, that's brilliant, and then explain to them why anyway. Yeah, that's the problem.
Is like, again, it's a little twist. It's like it's almost there, but I just want to impress on people, this is how we keep ourselves from being truth, is from, like, you hear something like this and instead of really listening for the sake of listening, we listen to bounce it off of other things, or we listen to create our own reality, to do something with it. And, Corban may have the base element, like he may get it, right? But if he's built all of this other contraption on top of it, then he doesn't get it. He lost it if he had it, or he heard it and he got it intellectually and he extrapolated it, he invented like that. You feel butterflies in your gut, you feel like you're onto something, synchronicities happen in the world, and you're like, there I am, oh, the universe is responding to me. But that still ain't truth. That's a trap. It's a very clever trap, but it's a trap nonetheless, that you're doing it, right? Just like all of the things that we are actually creating, when we say we create our own reality and we use that to block out how we've actually created reality, it's all us. I mean, I can say the universe is doing this, like there's some big devil called the universe that's against you, but it's you doing it to you. Because again, the base core problem is that you want to exist, right? Because you do exist. And so the idea that you can dissolve, be silence, and that that silence is its own aliveness, and that that becomes you sounds like possession, or sounds like the Borg, or we turn it into a horror movie. Even if we don't do it consciously, there's this little unconscious flicker that goes, I can control it. I can do this. I'm the one who's going to do this. And on we go, creating, all sorts of realities. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because that's how like pitch perfect talking about this needs to be, and it never is really. And I don't know if that's because we couldn't have a discussion like this in this way up until this point in history, because people couldn't hear anything other than like parables or stories with the moral to them, or like, here's your yoga that helps you in life, but don't worry about the other thing. You'll do that several lives from now. I don't know. I just know that it ain't working, and this is why. Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Jeremy. I, so, as they say, well, there's a lot there, Jeremy. But so I have you threw a lot. I love it when you say, I just want to throw this out there. And then what you throw out there is essentially this huge ball of, well, what they call in alchemy a massa confusa. Um, but
Sorry.
no, and let's okay. Let me say this. You know, I I think that I'm starting to understand a little better how you frame all that, and I think I'm starting to understand. No, you can't say understand, but I'm starting to perceive where you may be standing. I mean, even that's an overstatement. So one thing that we agree that, and this is, I honestly, this isn't a question of agreeing or disagreeing. I've been thinking a lot about this in the last couple of hours. Um, I find myself in the uncharacteristic and very awkward position of thinking of you not as a guru, but at least as someone who's a but this goes back for a year or two, someone whose understandings of things I actually trust. Um, and it's not in the sense that I think you're a guru, but I think that you have seen some things very, very clearly, maybe the whole shebang perfectly clearly. And the things that I intuit that you may have seen on the basis of what you've said over the years, they are not entirely in contradiction with the little tiny things that I just began to see. And so I trust you as a kind of I mean, guide is kind of overstating it, but someone to compare my experiences to, And boy, yeah, this is so hard to articulate because I really want to avoid telling people that, well, I can just say Jeremy is my teacher. Yeah, there you go.
Soothsayer.
Yeah,
Can I
no,
be a soothsayer?
uh, no, no, you can't.
Damn it.
But
Oh,
because a teacher, I've had lots of teachers, and a teacher is not someone who you think is infallible. It's just someone you think you can learn from. So
yeah.
that
Yeah.
articulates it the way you are in that sense, absolutely my teacher. And so I take whatever you say very seriously, and then I can rub myself against it, as it were, to see, okay, here's a place where I either don't understand what he's saying, or I think I understand what he's saying, or I think he's full of shit. Um, and so one of the first things that seems to me pretty clear in what you're saying is that, and you're obviously not alone in this, is that this stuff is these revelations at their maximum are really not communicable in human language. It's always going to fail. And if you're going to say something that isn't actively dangerous, you got to be super careful. And that seems really plausible to me, and it reflects my own little tiny iboga generated experiences of things that are frankly uncommunicable, and therefore for me not really um communicable to myself, because I came
Let
back
me,
and all I have is
yeah.
memories, and I like to imagine that my little experience is like, God, what do you even want to say? Is not totally unlike the kind of experience that you had, and I like to think that because then I can continue to think of you as a teacher, and I can compare the inarticulability of my experience with your accounts of the inarticulability of yours there. How's that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me throw the Ken Wilber lacquer on it, which is like, yeah, your experience transcends and includes your normal day to day. Meaning that Tom is still there, although he may be a little voice in the background of the big, Iboga experience. You are transcended and included in that state of consciousness, I assume, right? And
I
so,
guess.
on that level, obviously, it's similar. Or this is the thing that like says, okay, end to all of that, transcend and include all. So it's that ultimate version of that. So yeah, they are relatable. But I just want to stick with this point for a minute because, and put it, I'll give it another context, which is like Quora, which is like, there are no stupid questions, there are only stupid answers. That's Quora. If you've ever gone to Quora.com for anything spiritual, it's all stupid answers. But I read one last night on Kundalini. Someone, again, for the millionth time, was asking, are there dark symptoms of Kundalini awakening, and how can we avoid them? And there was a woman, I think she's either from India or of Indian descent, who seemed kind of over that question and over the whole thing. And part of what she said is true, and then the other part is not. Or potentially, do your own thinking on this. But what she said is essentially like, you're obviously watching all this YouTube crap about Kundalini awakening. Do you honestly think that these monks and gurus and whatnot went off into caves and spent lifetimes trying to awaken Kundalini and that you can just do it? Like you didn't have to do all of that work. And that is true. The truth of that is there, but she goes on to talk about lifetimes. They went. You have to do lifetimes of work and burning off karma and blah blah blah, and all of that is the cultural artifact in the way I think. So one part of that answer can be true and really strike you like, yeah, obviously we can't just, wake up because we did a Kundalini exercise that we learned on YouTube. Preposterous. And so therefore the question is irrelevant because whatever I'm feeling probably isn't it. And then I need to look at why it is I need to feel special and be the person who has these Kundalini experiences in the first place. But then that doesn't mean that the rest of it is true. That doesn't mean you then are like, okay, I'm going to give the monk thing a shot and go off into a cave, or I'm going to adopt a system of reincarnation where after lifetimes I'll put it off for some future event, not for right now. But this is what we do. Like we just want the answer. And so we run from answer to answer to answer. And we need to stop doing that. I don't think that you get that. Like when you're talking about iboga, and we could be talking about just meditation. You've talked about your breathwork stuff, whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, you're Carl Jung. Yeah, experience them and gain that knowledge or whatever. Just don't mix up that that's the same as what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like they're not the same thing, even if they have the same mechanics to them in a way of the transcendent include. You know what I mean? Yes, they're different than normal consciousness. Yes, you may appear to be encountering or may even be encountering other beings of psychic origin, but that ain't it. You know what I mean? And so if you want to engage with that stuff, obviously go do it. Just know that you're going to end up with a dead society in the end. But if you don't want to do it, then just give up.
Wait, no, see, okay, so this is so hard. I want to in my vague intuitions about what we're talking about. There's a lot of moving parts, some of which seem to me not essential, and I honestly can't articulate them at this point. But let's back up for a minute to your reading of Jung here. And I've got the paragraph in front of me, and it reminds me of something that my guy Henri Corbin says in a late piece where he's contrasting his understanding of the Asian Indian vision of emptiness as promulgated by some Western scholar, I forget who, against his vision of Gnostic knowledge, I guess, which is more individual, and so it's an analogous tension, I think, in Corbin's vision of Indian emptiness versus his vision of divine individuation. I think it's an analogous tension that you see in this paragraph from Jung. And so I'm sort of saying that both Jung and Corbin are stuck with or are representatives of a certain vision of transcendent humanity. No, this is terrible. This is terrible. If I were writing this, I would throw the whole page out. Wait. So, what I heard you saying, and you can tell us whether this is right or not, was that what Jung was missing in his dismissal of total emptiness was the fact that no, there is total emptiness, but then it's also total fullness at the same time. Is that your reading?
Well, that, but also that emptiness is also a code word for the consciousness or the intelligence in which all manifests.
Okay.
So I don't know if, again, like, just because something's ancient doesn't mean it's correct. I guess that's lesson number one. Um, but also, like, I don't know if he doesn't understand what emptiness means, or if the people telling him no longer understand that the emptiness is the aliveness.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not
No.
explaining it to him correctly. I love
Yeah.
that he was toward the end of his life, because that means he's had a lot of time to reflect on this and he still doesn't get it. But yet a lot of the other things that he writes, it's like he gets it. Does seem as though he gets it a lot of the time. He just, when thinking about it, puts it somewhere else. I don't know what.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, look here. That's that seems right to me, which is to say, um, not necessarily about this particular topic, but I think Jung was, as a living human, really hard to pin down. Both, and I think it seems totally plausible to me to say that sometimes he got it and sometimes he didn't. And because it's funny because I have the same questions about Corbin very often. It's like sometimes he seems to get it and sometimes he doesn't, no matter what it is. Um, and so, I mean, it's either literally true in both those cases that sometimes they got it and sometimes they didn't, or they're merely a reflection of the fact it's really hard to talk about.
Well, I don't know about Corbin, and you can tell me, but Jung, I mean, when he's talking about meeting with First Nations people in America, for instance, and even in Africa, and here in India, it affects him so deeply. It like wants to penetrate him, and he makes it very clear that although he sort of sees that these things are freer than his European identity, he still sort of thinks that like the European identity is like a step up in evolution, I think.
Yeah,
And
that's
he
really
wants to
good.
preserve his sense of self and his Europeanness.
Yeah.
And that's the mistake.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
that,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, that's clear. That's clear, and I tend to agree wholeheartedly with it. And look, that so and how Corbin, we'll deal with Corbin some other time or not at all. But let me pause here because that is important. Um, I mean, one of the things that characterizes Corbin as opposed to Jung, I think, is that Jung was never willing to give up his Europeanness totally. And that, for instance, could be shown by the fact that he wanted some respect from doctors and PhDs and academics. He didn't want to go full whole hog mystical. So on the one hand, he'll say, "I have," somebody once asked him famously, "Do you believe God exists?" And he says, "I don't believe, I know." But this is the same guy who says, "Oh no, I can't say anything about God. I'm just a psychologist. All I can say is about the images." Same guy. And
Mhm.
so he's torn between the part of him that by God had these experiences that just totally blew him apart, and then he wants to think about them as a European intellectual and be taken seriously for its so thinking. So he does not want to give up his position as a respected European academic psychologist. And Corbin has that to a lesser extent, I think. He's totally unconcerned about whether scientists and academics think that what he's saying is he didn't give a shit. He's a theologian and a mystic, and he's fine with that. I mean, sure, he still has his Western European 20th century persona, but he's less ontologically attached to it than Jung is, which I take to be an advance. And this is without this is the path. Oh God, I hate this language, but here it is. This is the path that I am on. That is to say, I went through all those decades of training to become an intellectual in the West. And I know a little bit of science, and I learned a little bit of this, and I learned a little bit of philosophy. And now, partly thanks to you, you son of a bitch, I'm having to recognize that that's all got to go. And that's very It's harder than I thought it was going to be, because that's the kind of lesson that Corbin was trying to teach. Let it go, man. Let it go. Aristotle's categories are just the dead bodies of angels. And it gives you angels, and then you hang on to the angels really tightly, and then you realize, well, shit, I can't do that. And you're left with, so intellectually, I began to realize that, oh, I have to let it all go. And then, I mean, chronologically, and maybe if anybody is listening to us, maybe it'll help somebody. I thought that I had given up all those things. And then I had Jeff Kripal, you know, and Eric Davis's high weirdness. And then you. And it was like, oh, fuck, you mean I got to think about this stuff? Are you kidding me?
Well,
I don't do that. I'm an
here's a
intellectual.
question. Well, but do you have to think about those things? Because here's the
No,
thing,
no,
you
no, no.
don't.
I,
Yeah.
so what it showed me
Mhm.
was that I thought I was outside of the cage of restrictions, and I was still right inside a little tight cage where we don't talk about weird shit because that's just stupid. And someone like you with your kinds of experiences, he's a madman. We don't think about your stuff. I mean, you're just a madman. And then Kripal kind of not, he says, well, if you think about it, all religion is built by madmen, And then I realized, oh no, I have to think about, oh no. By think about, I mean, open the doors of my cage that I didn't think I was in. And once
Right.
you've done that with something in my particular history, with something as fucked up as alien abductions, well, there's no box anymore at all, and you realize that you don't know anything about anything, and you don't have any criteria, and oh shit. And you came to know me early in that process of me realizing that, oh no, yeah, I really, oh no, I don't know anything. And then I take the iboga for the first time. So this is that process that Jung kind of said, oh no. So I go to Brazil and take the iboga. Jung goes to Africa and says, oh no, oh no, looks good, but not me. I'm not doing that. And Corbin says, oh no, come along. I can take you a little further. And I thought I'd gone with Corbin to the land of the angels, and then suddenly, bang, I realized, oh fuck, I'm not even close.
Well, okay, there's a lot there we could drill into and unpack and all of that. Let me start with this. So first, just to finish up on Jung, yeah, it was earlier in this chapter where he talks about what you just talked about, that he, was really depressed, really, with like scholars and how they're treating him and how he's being taken. And so it would be very appealing for him to, he didn't say go primitive, go native, as so many, I guess, Westerners had done when they first visited Africa, because it speaks to the primal thing in us that we can all relate to and yada yada. But that it would be a mistake. So he sets up, of course, I think pretty much he's trying to deal with it in the same way that he deals with the shadow material of sort of paying homage to that impulse, but not engaging it beyond that so that he can preserve his identity. And I think that's a real long way to go to just keep being yourself in the face of annihilation. but in a sense, I mean, he's inadvertently correct. You don't want to just replace one self-identity with another. What's the point? But he's not saying that, really. He's saying, no, I want my identity.
Yeah.
And so that's part one. Part two is when you're saying you don't want, that you thought you had done everything. And I keep saying there's no doing. Like there's no thing that you can do. In other words, when you're saying I thought I gave up this stuff, you're the being that needs to be given up by the body. So the illusion being projected by the brain or by the body can give up all it wants. Eventually, the body needs to give up that illusion. And it's really hard because that thought, that single thought that says, I am me, I am alive, I think, therefore I am, that person has taken charge and thinks it is in charge of everything and has suppressed the unconscious. And every time the unconscious reveals a bit of itself, it's like a revelation and a journey. And, you know, so just know that in a certain sense, it's, is it a paradox? Is it, what is it? What is the right word for this? Where, like, you don't need to engage all this batshit crazy stuff. You don't need to engage Jeremy as an abductee or, you know, any of the Jeff Kripal stuff, except that you do if you're to see, for the door to open of the possibility of, like, oh wait, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this reality as I've constructed it is incorrect. The key is to then not fill it with other stuff, as interesting as it is.
Yes.
Just use that moment as the moment to sit and contemplate the fact that that can even happen. How is it that I can go my entire life with the construction of reality and then replace it with something else, or have a eureka moment and have the universe come in and sort of like rearrange me in some weird liminal space? That's it. You know? That's it. I mean, beyond that, but we're always going to want to do the next step. We want the next thing. We want to know what the result is. You know what I mean? We want the next comfort level of, like, okay, this is my new ground floor, and how can I look at all the, you know, furniture in the room? How can I arrange it? And all of that, instead of being like, oh wait, but there is no room. Obviously, there's no room and there's no furniture because I just keep going and going, going. I'm not different. I'm not better. You know, Tom doing iboga doesn't become a saint or a sinner. He's still Tom doing iboga. You know, he may feel really great and he may feel a whole bunch of things for even for a couple of years, but he's still Tom. You know, Narcissus, as it were, is still there for all of us. So just see that. You know, if it's possible to just see that and stick with seeing that and the implications of it. I don't know what it is, but not move beyond it.
I mean, this is one point of contention between the two of us right from the beginning, because I've argued that there has to be. You always say there is no path, and while I'm a little closer to seeing what you mean by that, uh, I have to counter that. Well, there has to be some kind of path, in the sense that unless I get, blasted by a UFO, um, there must be something I can do. And lo and behold, I mean, I have to say, for me, the Iboga so far has been, well, I'm not sure. I was going to say the most important thing. And maybe that's true, but it's really hard to judge. And the point is that I feel much closer now to understanding what you're saying than I have in the past. In the following sense, I think I understood it intellectually because it makes a great deal of sense. These sorts of puzzles, how can you stand outside yourself? And it's a conundrum. It's a paradox. but but I think your point is understanding that it's a paradox doesn't help you at all. My argument would be that understanding that it's a paradox could, for some people, that is to say me, be a prelude to learning how to experience it with your body. Yeah?
Experience what with your body?
Hmm. Well, that's a good question because I don't know what it is. But let's put it a different way, to acknowledge that thinking about it won't get you anywhere. It seems. I mean, this whole discussion is sort of beside the point. But all I'm trying to say is that if you are a thinking type, which I am, that is to say, you take every bit of experience that ever happens to you and you think about it, poorly or well, doesn't matter. In order to break out of that cycle, which will get you nowhere except a lot more thoughts, it isn't pointless to think about it as a second level activity, at which point you give up thinking, or you might
Well,
rec- yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So the only
I think
preparation,
we're getting to something with the confusion. So here's something. So Jiddu Krishnamurti was raised believing in these masters that he would meet on an astral plane, which he ultimately gave up. He had his revelation or whatever happened and realized, no, this ain't it. And then he went on to talk about it for the rest of his life, even though people wanted to talk about those masters and stuff. I, as the weirdo, spent my life from like eighth grade to, I don't know, early mid I guess mid to late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in there, um, thinking that I'm an alien abductee and playing with that. Like, what does that mean? Is it even aliens? Is it something else? All of that. And then the spiritual thing, or whatever you want to call it, the wholeness thing, that the Jared goes away, it dissolves, cutoff point happens, and suddenly all that shit's meaningless. And it's something that you had said about your Aboga thing, which was you don't care whether it's real or not. You don't care whether this being exists, this toaster oven or this refrigerator woman. It doesn't
oh
matter.
God, yeah,
What matters is the experience and how you are with it now. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? So I'm trying to see if you can see it from that angle. And it's like, if it doesn't matter that it's real, then do you need to have gone through it? Maybe it's a bad question on that angle, because I'll stick with me or with Krishnamurti. Like, did I need to be an alien abductee to have these experiences? Did Krishnamurti need to have encounters with masters on an astral plane to then renounce masters on an astral plane as a tangential issue to truth? Like, his renunciation wasn't the thing, you know what I mean? To his followers, that was a big deal. To him, it was like, no, this is meaningless. Here's where we need to be.
yeah.
That's the important point, where we need to be, not where we thought we were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do you need to be in a certain place? I don't know that you do. I don't know that I needed to be an alien abductee for this thing that seems to have nothing to do with that. So, but does the having been that or whatever, does that mean that actually, like, does that just speak to my state of mind, which is the necessary thing? The state of mind that says, I really want to know what truth is, what the reality is. And when I do that in terms of the alien stuff, it's, I don't think that this is aliens, but what the hell is going on here? Is it just that that mind needs to be your mind? You know, in terms of inquiring into truth or reality, you have to have a pure mind in it of not like accepting answers. But because I had this weird background, it makes it look as though that background was necessary.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
background wasn't necessary.
yeah,
It was the mind that went through it, you
yeah.
know?
No, no, yeah, and there's right. I mean, it's certainly the case. It's certainly the case that people who will become, what do you want to say, awakened, or I'll just say awakened. The people who become awakened, they don't all need to be alien abductees, and they don't need to take iboga, and they don't need to go to the astral plane. Who knows what they need? But each one of them will maybe need
So
something different.
what do you think your mind is? That's the, I guess this gets to it. Like, where, when you as an inquirer into reality, what do you think you are doing? What do you think you as a mind, are you pure? Are you bouncing it off of the background to remain as you are? Like, are you trying to preserve something? Are you running from something? Like, what do you think you're doing? How do you think you approach this? I guess that's the question.
That's a fascinating question, and I'm totally stopped short because
By the way, I'm laughing because Tom is making funny faces at it.
ah,
Okay, so it doesn't
yeah,
translate to audio.
what Yeah. We should do that. We should do the video version of this. Um, I mean, honestly, so I mean, I think it's changed a lot over the years. And I'd have to think really hard about what I think I've been doing since I was six. Um, and honestly, I mean,
Well, but it has changed over the years. You've changed over the years.
it's
But
changed
where are you now?
enormously.
Where do you think you are now?
Where am I now? I'm just fucking curious. No, there's more to it than that. Um, no, it's not. I mean, it is. I don't even know what curious means. Let me think. It's very hard. I mean, I said this before we went down there the third time. I wanted to see what happens next, and I'm and why do I want to do that? I do that because I feel like I've never really been alive. And I think that if there's any thread that connects to my early childhood, it's I want to be as alive as possible, and I feel like I'm fucking it all up. you know, and and in the explicit context of Iboga, which was entirely new to me, I mean, there's all these people who are, they seem to be having really positive experiences, and they talk about love, and like you came back and said, well, I mean, it sounds a little goofy, but it is love all the way down. That sounds very attractive to me, and I've never had any contact with any emotions anywhere near that. And so people say that it's really neat. So there's this purely, there's this hedonism involved. And every time I go down there, I have experiences which get worse and worse and worse. And you sort of think, well, eventually maybe something good will happen and it'll be really great. And I'll come back and I can move to Hawaii and sit with Jeremy. you know. Uh, and so what do I think I'm doing? So exploring in that very, I don't know what I'm, it's, I'd like to, being alive would be really neat. Yeah. So I would
But
like to be as alive as possible.
when you think about how unalive you are, or how reality isn't what you think, like when you think about those things, do you get that pang that searchers get in like supposedly deep people, or does it go to like my mom kept me from this? Like what is the thing that is attached to that?
Yeah, is that's fascinating because I had those anxious pangs for decades. And at some point during my work with Corbin, I managed to get beyond them. Whether they'll ever come back and whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing, I have no idea. I've never really thought about it. I don't have any more. I mean, for a very long time, everything I did was obsessed. I was doing it because I, in some sense, had to, you know, until fairly recently, just the last few years. I don't write anymore. I used to write books because I had to. Now I don't do that. Mostly I just draw pictures of snakes now. um, and but look, so and so what is driving me? Nothing is driving me. And that is on one that is so super cool. But look, I need to ground this in something that's happened to me. No, something I've encountered just recently, and you may know. One of my online buddies asked me the other day if I had read Sand Talk by Tyson Yunkapora. He is, I think he's still alive, an Aboriginal Australian. And he wrote a book called Sand Talk, which I knew of a few years ago. I think it was published in 2017. And so I grabbed a digital copy and I started reading it. And I just thought, oh, this is so good. And it prompted me to start reading Urgency again because he's Where do I have the copy? Yeah, here it is. Um, he says all sorts of things that, from my point of view, reminded me of you. Recent traditions have emerged that break down creation systems like a virus, infecting complex patterns with artificial simplicity, exercising a civilizing control over what some see as chaos. The Sumerians started it, the Romans perfected it, and the Anglosphere inherited it. The world is now mired in it. It's a that's a not a very useful quote, but it's a an indictment of the modern world, which is as scathing and all-encompassing as yours, from the point of view of a First Nations person. And I love what he's saying. And now, where the hell is the quote that I really liked? But it reminded me of you. And so I opened up urgency again, and there is a lot of things in urgency that I looked at. Um, Enlightenment is what happens when the self dissolves completely. The self, you, you are not real. You are a projection of the brain. And like, okay, let's see if I can bring this to a point. Since my last Iboga experience, that makes sense to me in an experiential way.
Okay.
And that, it seems to me, for me at least, was a necessary step on the way to acknowledging the unreality. No, it's not unreal, but the unimportance, the transience, the
And
beside the
can I
pointness of me.
I got to throw something in here because as people listen to this, I just know it. I know it from being me. And I know it from, I don't mean now, I mean before, the before times me. That as you hear us talk like that, again, there's nothing to do. So there's no rejecting the illusion, there's no engaging the illusion because it sounds like what you're saying is something that people can find agreement in. And for us, that agreement is enough to say, I get it and I am validated once again. Therefore, I'm not doing anything. That's the nothingness that I'm doing. And it isn't the nothingness that you're, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like as we talk about this stuff, it sounds like instruction or it sounds like agreement to what people already believe. And we need to stop thinking like that. That's it. I mean, just stop thinking with that brain of yours as you're listening to this, and go just sit with it. Stop listening to this and go sit with it at some point.
Look, so
that's what I wish people would have said. The ancient people is all along the way that they're talking this stuff. I wish they had it as they were saying it in that way. You know what I mean? Because it's not like Tom means to be this way or I mean to be this way. This is just how people talk and then receive the information. And so how are you to stay awake that that's how you're receiving information unless somebody points it out? Like, don't, not don't, but just look at how you receive what you're hearing. Just look at it. That's as important as hearing it in the first place.
There's an old Zen saying, which I will butcher because I don't know the first thing about Zen Buddhism really, but the Zen master said, what's happening is I'm pointing at the moon and everyone's fixated on my finger.
Right.
This is that. Don't look at my finger.
But this is like now this is after thousands of years of having heard that the cliche by now is like, we all get it, right? Like everyone who hears that as an example, that's not a big fucking revelation anymore. That's just something that you see on a postcard.
Yeah,
And
well,
so,
see,
how do you talk to people like that?
well, gosh, no, see, the point is that for, yeah, I think, yeah, I think I'm maybe an example. I hate to, well, but I am talking about my experience, so you're stuck with me. It seems to me in the moment, the last few days in particular, that for the first time, I'm able to look past, no, not look. I mean, I think I have a body memory of my own non existence. You know, that it's not this statement, you are a projection of the brain. I mean, I'm not sure, a year ago whether I would have said that seems plausible or not. Um, but that's beside the point because that was all language and was all me thinking. I didn't have any experience. Oh, but surely I did when I was very little. I totally had that experience, that dissociation, that the me I think of as me is just a phantasm. And that, if you're not ready for that, that's totally debilitating. I mean, the one way to look at it, my life is my whole life has been an attempt to get me back. It occurred to me the other day, maybe my whole life I've been dissociated in this funny way. But there's no way to verify or deny that. Um, but the point is that to answer your question, I mean, religions are every religion is full of mystics trying to make this point that no, you guys have all got it wrong, and most people are not going to get it, and only a few are going to get it. It's not easy. I thought it's harder than I thought it was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, just like I was the guy sitting on the couch who got Krishnamurti, and then I got that I'm the guy sitting on the couch who gets Krishnamurti. That was the big
That
eureka
was
for
it.
me.
Yeah,
You're the guy now who did the Iboga thing, which was necessary to open you up to these possibilities as an actual reality. Like, oh my God, here they are.
yeah.
And now it's incumbent upon you to not be the guy who does that.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch so far. I mean, it seemed it's very, very hard for me not to think that I'm engaged in a stepwise process.
Right.
And yet I hear you, my teacher, saying it's not really the way to think about it. And I was, I know, but I'm just kind of,
But again, this gets to like, I hate saying, what do you want? But that is what it is. What is it that you actually want? I mean, you may understand what I'm saying, but you may also reject it. And you may say, like, no, I want to be young. I want to go into the psyche. I want to live in this carnival and explore. And
There
that's
is,
all what I want to do.
big dream. I had a dream. So, boys, there's nothing. Everybody could turn this off now. Nobody likes to listen to anybody else's dreams, but it was pertinent to this. I dreamt the other night that I was trying to teach a very young girl what was so exciting about learning that you could harness the power of flowing water using a water wheel, and that then you could run a mill or you could use belts to run machinery in a factory. And then I got super excited about the fact that you could generate electricity if the stream was running. And I was explaining electrons to her and all this. And I wondered what that dream was about. And I realized just the other day, oh, fuck. Tyson Yonkaporta or your indigenous friends or you would have said, oh man, don't you see what that's about? The poor young girl is just loving the flowing stream. And you're making all of human history and destroying the environment. because you were so excited about all the things you could do with the flowing water. It's like, oh, fuck, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I lived my whole life getting super excited because it's super exciting. This is Jung saying, "Oh no, no, I don't want emptiness. I want Western civilization, and I want psyche, and I want to explore the images." And that's exactly it. Whereas if you'd stick around with that young girl who I abandoned in favor of physics and science and development and male energies, and as Tyson Yunkaporta points out, narcissism, um, and power, if I just stayed there and learned what James Hillman calls the poetic basis of mind, that's a very hard, if you've spent all of Western civilization getting super excited about all the things you can do with the power of running water, boy, it's really hard to turn that all off and just decide that it's okay to sit by the pool and watch and listen to it tinkle. God, that's hard to turn that shit off. And that's what Tyson Young. That's what you're suggesting, I think. That's what he's suggesting in Sand Talk. That anything else, but I mean, it's a really heavy lift, and I love the fact that we started with Jung, because that, in some sense, that's the conflict. No, I don't want emptiness. I want everything. And man, oof, that goes off wrong real easy.
I just don't understand how he, again, unless it was not explained to him, but he's a smart cookie and he's well read. How does he not know what emptiness actually means? That it's not just this nihilistic void.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was having a bad day. But that's not true. Because yeah, and I really shouldn't say, because I don't know Jung all that well. And what I do know is that he's super familiar with the alchemical symbolism, in which there's the union of positive and negative and male and female, and there's all these conjunctions. And so I guess, as a general principle with Jung, because he was so complicated, because he wrote so much, and also because his memoirs, that book in particular, was filtered through some of his editorial women. Um, you might take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, and yet that tension between perceived Western positivism in all sorts of senses, and Eastern passivity, that's a kind of trope, a kind of conflict that he clearly fell prey to. And who wants nothing?
What's his editorial women? What does that mean?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. He was that book was take this with a just go look it up on Wikipedia. But that book was only partly his work. I think maybe Von Franz or Aniela Jaffe or others.
Honey El Jaffe, yeah.
I know that there was considerable literature written about how much of that book was actually Jung, and how much of it was cleaned up by people who wanted to make him look good. That's
Huh.
all. I don't know. Sonu Shamdasani is the person to look to for that, because he's probably the premier scholar of Jung in the world, and he's the guy that edited the Red Book. And he's written a lot about Jung, and he really knows Jung's ins and outs, and he's the guy to ask about that.
This must get to, Jesus, hearkening back to Peter Kingsley's critique of Jungian scholars, like maybe this is why, because maybe what they cleaned up shouldn't have been cleaned up, and he knows it. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you feel about taking a hard right turn that may or may not link up to what we were just talking about for the last hour?
I love it.
And tune in next week for that hard right turn. If you dare. I don't know why I said it that way.